I'm gonna say something, intro-wise in a second, but I just want to start out. I was like, just in case something happened, I want my main point to be heard at the beginning and the end. So nothing else on it. Look, the Black Arts era constitutes the most important moment in African American literary history. I want to say by far, but I'm gonna just go ahead and be nice and say by enough. Okay.
Something that Howard said yesterday, which I found really interesting, is that Baraka today is as much a black arts person as he was in the 60s, but he sort of has refined it, and I think that's true. I hadn't really thought about that, but and I think I was thinking about it as a contradiction, but it's not. It's just that there are certain elements, the positive elements of black art, which he has kept.
It is quite an honor to talk to poetry scholars, particularly about Alan Polite, and to talk to poets. I know many of you are accomplished poets, and I am quite honored. So one of the purposes that I have here today is to try to incite your interest in Alan Polite and some of the other poets that I'm going to talk about, and hand over this investigation of African American poets in Scandinavia to very fine hands, very fine critics that you are. So I'm hoping that as we go along, that your interest will peak and that you will take up this charge.
Well, it was really just out of my own feeling that I decided, and when I stumbled on a poem and I said, oh my, that's beautiful, and so I put this in, and then I found a drawing that, oh, that is exactly like an illustration to the poem or something, then I just put it in.
The best place to go is to this book that was published last year, which is online and openly available, called Debates in the Digital Humanities, and it talks about, it gathers together many previously published articles on teaching, on research, on all kinds of issues within the digital humanities. So plenty of reading material there, but in general, I think of it as just kind of the intersection of computers and humanities. So it could be using computational tools and methods from computer science to do to look at humanistic questions. That could be text mining, data visualization, GIS and mapping, looking at, and Howard had mentioned big data, so lots of projects looking at data and trying to find patterns through those.
There's this woman named Rosie Poole. She shows up to Fisk to do a presentation, and she reads his poem, and he's very impressed. He's like, wow, she made that sound really good. So he went and revised the poem and then sent it to her and said, I consider this poem a failure. He says, I heard you read it, it made me like it more. Now it was kind of a little sly thing. He said, I liked it so much when you read it, so I went and revised it. I think that's kind of funny, right? Like, I liked how you read this, so I went and changed it. Anyway. And she encouraged me to do some projects around African American literature textual scholarship. And I couldn't think of anything to do, and I was always into Richard Wright. He's been the person, but the big thing about Richard Wright, I was saying at times, like, all the people have done the important things with Wright. So I was trying to figure out what I could do, so I blended textual scholarship, Richard Wright. Just happened to come across the old bookstore that had first edition Native Son and Black Boy, and they were selling for $2. So, I got all of those.
I was amazed, and I'm still amazed that Howard Ramsey went all the way through from undergrad to grad, studying with friends of mine, brothers, got a PhD. studying, going all the way from undergrad to a PhD and studied with black scholars. I mean, that still has me reeling. As I said, we just, we read it, and 5 minutes, sometimes up to 5 minutes before the actual class, you were completing what you, because, when were you going to read it? You're out of grad school, you're working. So, but we did the work, and as Toni Morrison said at a function not too long ago, we were tough. We were tough.
Everybody had their Coltrane poem. He was this central, exciting figure. And the other central, exciting figure is Malcolm X. And it is kind of interesting. I just will repeat everything Howard said. Malcolm X had the style, and Coltrane had the great music. But people really imitate Coltrane, and to the point of wearing his glasses and putting their finger over there. I mean, so that part of the style did I say Coltrane? Malcolm X continues. I meant Malcolm X.
Okay, so in anticipation of the reading, because I saw this week that they had assigned you to read something from my first book, The Muse is Music, I decided I'd read a poem that's in it, even though it's a book of scholarship, and I do see myself as a scholar of poetics, but I work through poetry to achieve that. And the poem is actually called Post Soul Train. Okay. Post Soul Train. Scream! A screech, a squeal, a squeak, a squawk, a stutter, a sob, and a holler and a honkin', moan and groan and mule and howl, a yowl, a yop, a yawn, a sheet of sound, a well of sound, a welling sound, a weltering sound, a tapestry sound, a torrent of sound, an aggressive sound, a serene sound, a rough, tentative, meditative mantra, amazing and amusing sound, amazing sound. A tear, a terrible, terrible tear, a terrible, terrible tear, a terrible, terrible, sweetback, sweet, black clarinet, tenor, soprano sound. An altered, alto, alter sound. An ill, Philadelphia sound. An ill, Philadelphia sound. An R&B commercial. Break! A walk in the bar and blues. A bridge to spiritual sound. A gospel round. A walk in the bar blues. A bridge to spiritual sound. A gospel round and around. A hymnal. A hardball. A harp. A blues finding rhythm and cruise sound. An upheaval sound, a cerebral sound, a homegrown sound, an upbeat sound, a grassroots trick, triple feeling, tight talk, tight light, that sound, a waltz, a 7 steps to heaven sound, a heaven sent, a freedom song, a free jazz sound, a run and riff, a running around and around and around and around sound, a 2 + 2 = 4 times 4 and 4 times 4 is the classic quartet sound. A 2 and 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 2. Too long sound. A loud, cunning, strong sound. A calm, modal, cool sound. A warm, warning, hot sound. A saint seeking a universal sound. A universal sound. A vibrato sound. A vibrationary sounds. The sound of jazz. The sound of anti-jazz. This Coltrane sound. This Coltrane song. This Coltrane song. Coltrane song is song. Coltrane song is soul, post-classic soul surrounds. Coltrane's quartet sound. Telepathic. So, that's the list for me.
And I want to read 2 poems about my mother, and this whole question of gender and gender role comes up in these poems. Because here was a woman who was just, quite brilliant, a wonderful organizer, but the way things were set up at that time, she really didn't have a role, and a part of that made her just a furious human being, and such a furious human being. There were lots of people who didn't like her, So, a guy in a black SUV. As I slowly inched toward the toll booth, a guy in a black SUV cuts in front of me, pretends I'm not there, edges forward in his massive black machine. I mutter, but do nothing. However, if this guy had done this to my mother, She would, without a second's hesitation, slammed her car into his, leaped out of hers, smashed his windshield with a crowbar while swearing at him like a wild woman. And as the guy would jump out of his vehicle, running toward her, screaming, "Are you crazy?" she would swiftly kick him in the nuts. And as he would crumble to the ground holding his privates, this magnificent fury beyond his comprehension, he would simply reiterate, "Are you crazy? What a woman." I can see my mother, always dressed in an immaculate white blouse, in her yellow sports car, her concentration perfect behind the wheel, driving 80, 90 miles per hour, a $100 bill in her kangaroo wallet. If caught, she will pay the fine with little bitterness and a little showbiz, dramatically flapping down the C note. She knows the precise worth of her fun.